as you will know, we have divided the day up into a series of kind of roundtable reflections, and we're largely first looking at festivals, then we're looking at some international connections, and then finally we will look at some artist responses to the year, and then we'll have a little sing-along, which is actually quite reflective too. I've asked all the people taking part in that to kind of share some of their feelings on this crazy old year with us then too. So, but we'll sing along too as well. And it's technically going to be a nightmare, but what the hell, that'll be fun. I am joined by a co-host from the Outdoor Arts UK board. I am delighted that Lorna Rees is joining me throughout the day to be my co-host. Lorna, welcome.
Thank you very much for asking me, Angus. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be within this community.
Brilliant. And you've been a great supporter throughout the year, as you've been in there, diving in with great things, entering Coronavision World Song Contests, winning Coronavision World Song Contest. Amazing. So I think your year is definitely a winner. Whatever that may be like. Yes, beautiful. Maybe we'll be hearing a little bit of that later on. I'm just remembering to take my background down. Just a few points of order. Yes, I'm wearing trousers. The people on Facebook who thought I wouldn't be wearing trousers, I am. Hang on a second. If I just remove my virtual background, I'm just going to prove there are trousers on there. But this is the suit I wore in Coventry, and look, it's so voluminous on me now because of all the lovely lockdown weight that I managed to lose. So Zoom, God, we all know it within an inch of our lives right now. Keep yourselves on mute if you would. Do say hello in the chat. I haven't got the chat window open. I can see there's lots of chats, so do say hello or say happy Christmas or festive greetings in there so we know who you are. And I would recommend, if you're on a PC or laptop, I would recommend speaker view, then you get great big faces. But of course, I understand if you want to be in gallery view and nosy into people's homes, because we all love doing that on Zoom and it teaches us so much about people. So what I'd like to do first is talk to, we've got 4 festivals. We were going to have 5. Unfortunately, Gwen from the Coddywomple in Bristol is unable to join us. She has had a pet crisis. I don't know the species of the pet, but a pet crisis is going on now in Bristol. So unfortunately, can't join us, which is a shame because she was part of the, we kind of were looking at some very different scales of the narrative here. But we've got 4 lovely people.
Angus.
A bit over anyway. Hello.
I worked on the Coddywomple as well. And
you did, Lucy. Are you going to have a word for us?
I can say some words.
Lucy, you star. Let's be impromptu. It's not over-programmed at all. There's plenty of room for 5. So that's great. Excellent. Lovely, lovely, Lucy. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Lovely to see you. Great. What I'd just like to do is say hello first to our first panel. And I think you've all got different ways that you managed to react to this year and do some stuff. So say hello, Bradley. Could you just tell us who you are and where you come from?
Hi, Angus. Thank you. And thank you for all the amazing things that you and your team have been doing this year to sustain us all through this. And you've been absolutely, gold star, platinum, everything. So
thank you. I like platinum.
Lots and lots of applause here from festival.org for Outdoor Arts UK. Thank you. I'm Bradley. I'm from Greenwich+Docklands International Festival, which is produced by festival.org. We, as you'll know, we were here earlier this year with Stella, talking about what we were hoping to do, and we actually made something happen, which we were enormously proud of. It's very different from the festival that we were going to present when we set out in February with all our plans laid out and board sign off and everything. But I think in all the 25 years, because it was our 25th anniversary, it's the one I'm most proud of. Obviously the hardest in all sorts of ways, and actually one probably with the, on the face of it, the smallest audience. 21,500 people came this year, but actually the one with the biggest impact. And I do remember, the conversation with Stella in that meeting, and I came away feeling very inspired from everything that she had to say there. And in a sense, for all of us, I think that it's important to remember there's always something you can do. That notwithstanding the most difficult of circumstances, our sector is perhaps, surprisingly, because we all feel quite fragile in various ways, actually a great deal more resilient than perhaps we thought we were. So I think it's been a very heartening year.
Lovely. We will return to that point. That resilient point is a really important and a good one. We will return to that, and we'll talk a bit. But I just want to go around our panel. So, Clive, hello. Where are you?
I'm here.
So, Clive, can I just say up front, thank you for being our Arts Council Relationship Manager, but I'm delighted to welcome you not in that capacity for once. That's excellent. So just say who you are and what you're doing and what you're here representing. Thank you.
I'm here representing an organisation called Certain Blacks, and I have to apologise because my voice is slightly gone because producing outdoor work can actually be flat out, and I got a cold producing our last Site Pacific piece, which was on a lighthouse. What Certain Blacks does is produce diverse indoor and outdoor arts. We went into 2020, we'd just been awarded Elevate funding from Arts Council England, and that's to support diverse organisations. We were going to do an ordinary festival. Didn't work out that way. I'm going to have to drop a few things in the chat. First thing I have to say is I live in Newham, and I live opposite one of the, I live opposite the Excel Centre. And that was one of the Nightingale hospitals. So part of my experience this year has been watching that turn into basically a hospital and then back again. My first festival, we worked with London Borough of Newham, and I'm going to drop something in the chat to produce an online festival called Newham Unlocked. And that really, I have to say a big thanks to Newham for supporting it. Originally, they were going to do a festival which was for Newham, which was going to be an ordinary festival. They then went and asked us, can we produce something which was online and virtual? What we ended up doing was producing a mix of pre-recorded outdoor work with people like Mimbray, Upswing, which were reaction to what was happening at the time. Upswing produced work which was already in existence, Catch Me, but you can't catch people in C19 rules. You can't touch anybody. So they had to rework how they did that piece. Again, Mimbray had to rework how they did their piece as well. We also did 2 days of live streaming, and I learned a lot about actually presenting work which was live. So we did that from East Ham Town Hall. And then that was over 3 days in August. And then we've recently just finished, and I will drop this in the chat as well. We've recently just finished a Site Pacific work with a company from Sweden, Slavpad. And we did this, again, we live streamed it. And we did it on a lighthouse in the Royal Docks. Again, that presented different pieces of work. I think that the biggest challenge this year has been not just putting on the work, but putting on the work safely and working with artists. We've learned
right, we will come to that, Clive. I'm just going to curtail you there, and we'll come back to some of those specifics. We're not getting what you're dropping in the chat, though. I think you might be sending it privately to someone.
Oh, well, I'll drop it again.
That'd be grand, just so you know it's not there. Lovely. So actually, Gwen, so Lucy, could you just tell us what Coddywomple normally is?
Coddywomple is not normally anything. We made it up especially for lockdown. Gwen and I, Gwen is the owner of Juggling Inferno and Circle Street Theatre, which are much more commercial things, but obviously all our commercial work went kaput. So we developed the Coddywomple, which was micro interventions across Bristol, all at the same time, all on the same day, with a bunch of with our friends and with a group of people from Bath Fringe Festival who were running a scheme called New Works, developing new street artists.
Lovely. That's we like that anyway, under the best of circumstances.
Yes. So we kind of stole that and put them to work on the streets of Bristol.
Great, amazing. We'll come back to how you did that shortly. That's brilliant. Rachel, hello, nice to see you. So you're here, now I know you're a freelancer, but you're kind of here representing Bournemouth Arts by the Sea.
Yeah.
If you just tell us a bit about what your role is for that festival, which of course did go ahead in a different form this year.
It did. So my role is community and outreach. I took that on in 2019. So 2020, the 10-year anniversary of Arts by the Sea, was going to be the second time we had taken an element of the festival into the community, taking it to a hard to reach area of Bournemouth in terms of audience. Yeah, and my role is to not only take that work to them, to parts of perhaps people that might be less engaged, but it's also to ensure that we're booking locally as far as possible, which we were very successful at this year. So which went alongside COVID safety restrictions nicely, but was already an intention. So yeah,
right, that's really good. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then finally on this panel, Stella, Festival of Thrift. Again, I was there a couple of years ago, and you were pretty early in declaring that you were going to go ahead with something.
Well, it was a bit mad after we had our project grant application stopped in March to think that we could still achieve something, but we were determined to. So from a large-scale outdoor event that runs on a greenfield site for 2 days with a Friday night parade to launch it all off, we rethought and learned from everybody else and talked and decided we needed to reach out to at least one small community. So we planned a hyperlocal event, and we also planned a digital festival, which would be a series of events happening together on the same day, live and recorded, that still were embedded in the place and not just embedded in a Zoom room.
Always a joy. It looked great online, even if one couldn't get there, which was an interesting hybrid. And you've used that other H word, hyperlocal, which has sort of been an interesting touchstone for this year that we've all talked about. And it's actually, everybody here talking has got an element of that in their work this year. Brilliant. How nice to see all 5 of you. And congratulations on getting stuff out there this year by hook or by crook. We applaud you, and we are inspired by that. I just want to we'll go around again. Lorna and I'll go around again. So Bradley, I want to start with you. So GDIF, Greenwich+Docklands International Festival, it's huge, it's massive. We're usually there in huge, great crowds, which is the joy of it. But I think it's really important to point out that you do have much more sort of discrete programming going alongside what goes on in the park anyway. There was always an element of that in the program, which is really, really important. And that seemed, I'm interpreting it, that seemed to suddenly become the bit that became the main focus. I wonder if you could just talk about how you went through that process, and also really key for you was keeping your local authorities on board in terms of their fears and perhaps their aspirations for what you can do for the community. Was it tourism? Was it local engagement? What was those driving forces for you?
Gosh, that's a big question.
Sorry, it's early in the morning, I know.
I guess, you know, in terms of the journey that I went on in reimagining the festival, one of the things that I felt was very salutary and from which I learned was going to our Greenwich Cooperative Development Agency food hub at Woolwich Common Community Centre and volunteering there for a few days and packing the food that was going out to those shielding and those most vulnerable people in the borough of Greenwich, and talking to, and really, I think, you know, there are people that I knew, but I suppose that it inspired me to think, well, we've got to reimagine the way we do this and connect it. So, you know, not just from the safety point of view, but in terms of what I think people need right now, just like those food boxes and the provocations that we sent out with them to get involved in different the online activities and so on outside the festival, before the festival. So yeah, our engagement program, you know, became very much more focused and I think much more vital. And at the same time, we obviously love working with international artists. I'm very proud of the fact that we actually still managed to invite and present 2 international companies in August, but it became increasingly difficult to do that throughout the year. But the flip side of that was that we were able to renew and work with a much wider range of UK-based artists than perhaps we would have done in the preceding year, and that was enormously enriching and rewarding, and those relationships are all, you know, ongoing and important for us. So in terms of local authorities, I hope that's the first part of the question. The local authority thing, I think, is fundamental. It will continue to be fundamental going forward. They're going to be under pressure in 2021, just as they have been this year. Financially, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult, and there's always that balancing exercise that I think we all know about as choices have to be made. But going in there from the very beginning, and not just sort of being best friends with your licensing department, but really understanding what putting yourself in the shoes of the local authority and trying to understand what it is, the difficult thing they're trying to do, always helps. You know, in our case, as Angus, you said, there was this imperative to reboot the local economy in some way in the late summer, early autumn, and we got behind that and helped to engineer that in a small way. But yeah, I think local authorities are really magnificent and wonderful, and perhaps have been underrated and not valued as much as they should have been in recent years.
Great, that's really interesting to hear and good to hear. We have to talk about safety, because obviously yours is one of I managed to come to loads of yours, and I'm sure several people in the room did as well. And it felt, you know, I mean, health and safety within an inch of its life in the best possible way. And also, I know, I mean, with your international work, you had a big cancellation, didn't you, quite late in the day with the Belgian company, that obviously was to do with the shift in rules. That was the thing, of those quick responses that we constantly had to make. I just wonder if we talk a little bit about a process of who you worked with to get all of that procedure in place from a standing start.
We never cancel anything, we postpone, Angus.
Of course. Good. Sorry, I'm trying to be Pollyanna today, don't you worry. We postpone.
Glass always half full.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have in-house a kind of fantastic producing and delivery team and the head of production, but we also work with an independent advisor with Blue Yonder Events, who held our hands, and indeed the hands of the local authorities, in helping us develop those plans, which would obviously be very different next year. I mean, I envisage that there will be this will be with us in some way or another for a long time. And also, you know, what was so interesting as well this year was sort of trying to second guess where the audience would be, what their appetite would be for this, because obviously they came to this as the first live thing that they'd experienced. So there's you know, masses of caution and apprehension, and going on that journey was really, really wonderful to watch as well. But yes, I think Blue Yonder Events, Ken Rankin was, you know, the patron saint of Greenwich+Docklands International Festival.
And one last, I just want to, one of the great things is that your local audience obviously engages by just normally rocking up to your events, and you work with communities way beyond the main bit of Greenwich, because it's always a huge cycle for me, all the way to Greenwich, and then usually the same distance again to go and see the show, which is amazing. Just practically, how did you manage to ensure that you know, the online ticket sales meant that those people weren't excluded? Because I know how important that is to your programming.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think we've got lots more to learn from it. It wasn't perfect, but what we endeavoured to do was work with local ambassadors in different local areas, housing estates, and so on, who connected with local people, and there were QR codes through which you could get, you know, privileged access for local audiences, and we did lots of work. We held back seats to enable people who rocked up on the day still to come in. And obviously a ticket puts a barrier in straight away. You know, it was different. On the other hand, it means that we've got far more audience data than we've ever had before, but, you know, anyway. And I suppose the other thing that felt really important, I hadn't spoken about this before, and maybe, you know, this has come up later on in what others have done as well, is it felt really important this year that in what we were doing with the creation of the program, that we should work in a really agile way with events as they were unfolding. So we were making work with Theatre Royal Stratford, for example, Charles to campaign, for example, but also with Luke Jerram, of course, with the pandemic itself, with In Memoriam, and the really quite extraordinarily moving ceremonies that took place for NHS staff around that. So I think that proved, it took me back to the whole proposition of outdoor arts, which has, so much political activism in its DNA, and I know we all know this, but it felt that we were given permission to work much more in a hands-on way and a much later, and not rely so much, because they want to bring the very best work do tend to do, which is go shopping. and this was not a shopping trip. This was a different kind of curatorial and producing exercise.
Online shopping doesn't work so well with us, does it? It's,
no.
It's fine for your groceries, but there we go. I'm going to hand over to Lorna. Thank you, Bradley.
I obviously need to unmute. Clive, I wondered if it might be possible for you to tell us about your learning and what you went through. I know you I don't know where sorry, I've lost you. Thank you. Yeah, you were starting to talk. Go for it.
The learning, it's almost coming on from Bradley's thing. Things had to be worked for the new world. One of the things that we did do was we tried to be a bit crystal ball-y. So the whole sort of theme around the festival was sort of the one we did with Newham was surveillance. Particularly because we're sitting here doing this, everybody's on camera, everybody's on Zoom. What we wanted to do is turn that around and put people into the real world. So a lot of the stuff we did was designed wasn't for audiences, but we were going to film it and hopefully get some pop-up audiences. So Bradley's already mentioned Stratford, and we did Doc Comedy in Stratford Theatre Square. Outside Theatre Royal, outside the Theatre Royal. That was a magical day because it was a real piece of old school outdoor arts with audiences, which we ran a couple of times, and it worked with audiences, but it was there to be felt. I don't know if you Doc Comedy, but they were really active and they were really good. And then the other we did on the outdoors, as I said, Upswing we talked about, they really reworked that work. The premise of Catch Me is Catch Me. It's to dancing. They were really good. Saying, well, how do we? And they reworked the work to COVID-safe piece of work, which we filmed. I think it shared film as well. So it was that learning of being agile. Or everything that we created this year really has been new. Nothing, as Bradley was saying, nothing has really been off the shelf. Even the people that we did do off the shelf, you might have seen Addictive TV worked with us as well. We had to persuade them to do the online concert a bit differently from what we've done. So it's been like that. And then the last word, I'll drop a word to learn about production. I worked with Centre Stage, and I hadn't worked with they're a production company that worked with Newham. A guy called Grant I worked with United, and it's got to be said, this year has been really, really big. It's the production support has just been phenomenal to do it, but not just to do it, but do it safely, COVID safely, and go for all the rules and risk assess it all has been phenomenal. So I have to say a big shout out to our newly found production.
And what I love is so creative curatorially. Did you already have those relationships with those artists that was established?
I mean, with
or did
Vicky,
you find new people?
Well, no, with Vicky, she's been sort of mentoring me in circus because I did last year. We did a thing called Circus, and for the last 2 years, Vicky Adume from Upswing has really been holding my hand through the whole sort of, circus. Well, I know, but presenting circus and presenting it safely because that's its own safety concerns. So we worked really well, and we've got a long relationship, so we could actually thrash some of this out. And she can talk about the concerns that she wanted. And part of what Certain Blacks has always done anyway is we're a development organisation, so we always try to invest in making the work. It's not about, you know, can you do it, but it's about the investment process and the development process. And both with them and Mimbre, who I've known for quite a few years, so this gave us a good chance to produce new work. We put them in Barrier Park because they couldn't do the original work that they were doing. And they reacted by producing a piece of work which they didn't do acrobatics in. They reacted to each other. And it's a really, again, it stands as a nice piece of work on its own. So that was really two really nice relationships.
Yeah, Vicky's coming in later to talk to us as well, which is fantastic. And if people haven't seen that piece of Dance for Camera, it's stunning. It's really stunning. Thank you so much, Clive. We probably have to.
Yeah, let's move. Let's go on to Coddywomple, if we may, Lucy. So you were just saying this sort of was born out of the situation, and my impression from here in my Zoom screen world was that things were happening. We talked of this, and suddenly things were happening on people's doorsteps or in their front gardens, and you just grabbed what was brilliant about and local about Bristol, and people joined in, and you facilitated that.
Very much.
Explain properly.
Right, so I ought to explain what Coddywomple means because nobody actually knows. It's kind of
a great word, though.
It is a word, and it means to travel purposely to an unknown destination. And what we were doing was creating acts or modifying acts that would continually move through people's neighbourhoods on a specified route. And we have a website with maps and all kinds of things that people can see to see what's going on in their local area. And the idea was that we weren't drawing people into large crowds. We were drawing people into their own streets. So it was really hard because we had to discourage people from travelling. We had to discourage people from congregating. We had to, like, everything we know about how to put on a show, we had to rethink. It was, yeah, a headache for about 6 weeks. But we worked with Amy Rose and Pascal Stratton and took loads of guidance from loads of people about safety and developed a code of conduct for how our artists should behave. And there were about 40 different artists performing all together across Bristol all at the same time. So.
And you, as a website, were directing audiences to this work so that they didn't have to travel, or how did you communicate with audiences?
Well, it was mostly through the website, and we had flyers printed for all the acts individually so they could flyer their own streets. There was an act that was actually on my street, which I didn't get to see because I was with another act. And they put up their own posters. They did loads of work on their own, which was fantastic. We managed to get on BBC Points West 3 times because there was no other news.
It was a quiet year for news, let's face it.
Yeah, and we brought them some giant mice and a crystal ball juggler and a robot and which things that like all this joy that they hadn't seen. So they were like, we want you on 1 o'clock, we want you on 6 o'clock, we want you on 10 o'clock. We're going to keep putting you on. Can you come back on Sunday and tell us how it went? That kind of thing. So, yeah.
That appetite was there. And in terms of audiences, what was your feeling from your Bristol local?
I got sent. Well, the act I was working with, we had a crowd of around 30 people, which it was kind of like getting to the point where. Which is totally counterintuitive. I've seen footage from my own street where they were doing songs and juggling, and they were literally being chased down the street by my neighbours, which I thought was fantastic. It was, yeah, really well received across the city. So, yeah. Brilliant.
Now, be as discreet or indiscreet as you like. Can I just ask a little bit about like funding and how were artists paid, or were they busking, or did you manage?
We were working with Bath Fringe and the New Works, which was part of the Bath Fringe Festival. That was kind of already paid for, so we already had a group of acts that we could work with to do this stuff. The rest of, unfortunately, we got funding to pay for the website and for publicity and for mine and Gwen's time through the Arts Council. everybody else volunteered their time, which I am eternally grateful for. I think everybody was extremely bored of being in their own houses, and in an organised way, I think really uplifted a lot of people. And we got some community-based things. We had some Morris dancers and all kinds. So it was a real mix of people that wanted to do things.
Brilliant. Morris dancing. It's back. It's finding its place. And local authorities buying into this, your Bristol colleagues, yeah?
So we were in touch with the Bristol bid group, and they were all for it, and they were kind of like, can we put it on for everybody else? And we told them how much it might cost, and they weren't really into it anymore. And the City Council Arts Department came to us quite late in the day, and I think they were a bit worried about what we were doing, and we kind of presented them with the risk assessments and codes of conduct and what it really was, and then they were like, yes, we want this.
Great. So that sounds like good. We'll talk about the future at the end of this, but that sounds like good future building. Grand. Great. And you know, we do hyperlocal again. This is exactly where we're talking. So there'd be a theme. I'm handing back.
So Rachel, in Bournemouth, which is my local festival. And I'm really thrilled we've got this a connection here, and actually you were working on an estate which is next door to the estate where my partner grew up, so it was a real pleasure. Rachel, I can't see you on speaker view, sorry, I don't know if
I'm there. I'm just...
Hey, brilliant. Hooray. So what was your learning in putting that work on, and was it and how was it different, I suppose, to what you might have usually done? Because I know it's something you've already been working on in a previous year.
When we took the entire event outside, previously we used the community centre, which we the community and was familiar and comfortable for people in the area. But the amount of people that discovered the performance, for me, I won't take it indoors again unless I absolutely have to, because I think we have many quotes from people who just go into the shops or pop into the exit, whether it be for COVID reasons or so quite a few families came to the swings and, you know, the normal use that they'd have from the park, and stayed within those boundaries for a while watching, and then carefully, and when they felt comfortable, came out and rotated around the various performances, which I really loved seeing, because it is awesome if people come there to see what you've got to offer, but it's also almost more wonderful if they discover it. So I feel like there's not lots of reasons other than weather than to go back indoors, and that community work has got a real place outside and visible.
Stay outside, it's where it's at, honestly. And from the festival's long-term aim, is the idea that you will keep doing stuff that's hyperlocal in communities, working with underserved communities, or is it that you kind of get those audiences to the main festival? What's the
No. We had set aside funding. We've moved our part, the community event, to a week before the festival, whereas last year it was in the same weekend, and we thought, well, if we really want to have a fluidity between the two, it's got to be at different times. So we moved it a week earlier, and we were providing transport, free transport from the West Tower area into the town centre to access the main festival the week after. Obviously that then didn't happen, but absolutely it's two-prong all the way. It's not one or the other. We definitely want people to come to the main festival, but the community provision is separate to that and ongoing. It's a long-term commitment. It works alongside our new young producers scheme for 17 local young people to train and get practical experience in programming with expenses covered, and budget for their own events that they want to put on. And, you know, we're looking currently at all locally to program more locally. It's a massive part of the commitment. I mean, I think it was always part of the commitment, but it became a lot easier when Without Walls came in. And, you know, funded a sign build up more. And I think as well, because I've worked so much locally, you know, reach out to people I knew, reach out to people I knew of, and, you know, just get those people working locally and paid to work locally.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
And it's great to hear. You know, we're hearing bids, we're hearing local authorities buying. This is great. It feels like we're expanding so much of our area of interest. We've always intended to, but this is good. Stella, talk to us about Festival of Thrift. So your journey, half online, still keeping a live element.
Well, we started out with the premise that you can create your own festival at home, thrift your place. And of course, you know, that spirit was live with VE Day. So trying to maintain relationships with the artists that we would have booked for the big online activity, and we created an online digital activity pack. And of course, not of course, but in Redcar and Cleveland, there's a lot of digital poverty. So we had to think about how we got information out to people, working with food hubs, working with community development officers, getting print out to them. When we identified the community very isolated in East Cleveland, in Broughton, that we wanted to work with, it was very much there about building. So it was door-to-door conversations, handing out packs, camping on the village green, meeting them, talking to them, and finding out what they wanted to do. So the hyper-local event in a small 2-street area with sheltered housing, social housing, owner-occupied housing was a mix that we were looking for, and we really needed the local authority to support us identifying that place. We're a tiny team, so I was the community development person with my producer. We were there knocking on doors, becoming that role, and then becoming producers of an event that was very, very much just for them. We didn't publicize it anywhere, and that sense of specialness, I think, in that community, that we had created a festival of thrift with and for those residents, was so valued by the people we worked with there, by their local councillors, by their community development manager. Continue, and we will do at least one, if not more, hyperlocal events next year, alongside more digital. So we filmed that activity and we incorporated it into the online event a couple of weeks later and showed what people did do and could do. We didn't get hordes of people visiting those streets because we kept it very, very quiet and very special.
You sort of under-advertised, didn't you? You didn't really share that hyper-local stuff.
Didn't tell anybody we were doing that. No, we focused very strongly on thrift your place. You can create your own festival. You can work with Whip It Up, Noisy Toys, Fix It Cafe, suitable instructions. Here's, you know, this is how you could look at clouds. Join in with the choir and the 13 different packs we produced. And so when we came to the digital event, we wanted to be very much still about the place, but broadcast Redcar, broadcasting from there. But we sent out the Thriftmobile all over the area, talking to people who'd thrifted their place. And we ran a live stream of non-stop activity through the day with workshops and talks and demos in parallel with an online marketplace. And we probably over-programmed, Angus, like you might have done today.
We love over-programming, yes.
But we can reuse is we can upcycle, recycle, we can show it again, and we have shown it again, and we have memory when we do revisit it, because we harness the local radio station, the voice of Redcar, the mighty Redcar, Julie Donaldson was our roving reporter, as she went out interviewing people who were cloud watching, or who had grown stuff in their back garden, or who had fixed stuff. And sadly, she contracted COVID at the end of the month. Not to do with going out with the so we no longer have it was, and how important it was to be thinking about those people who couldn't participate. So burning memory is, as we paraded with Neighbourhood Watch, with Jennifer Essex, with Whip It Up through the street in Broughton, waving at those elderly people, shielding, who couldn't come out. Eating in a socially distanced way, back to our values and our shared ambition to build a creative community. So everything we do drives that. So whether it's in a local street, whether it's online, whether it's back to the large festival, that's what will hold it all together.
Amazing. I'm all choked up, actually, Stella.
That makes me feel so emotional.
Beautiful. But I did want to ask you one thing, is when I come to Festival of Thrift, I love the shopping. I love the outdoor arts, of course, but I love the shopping, because there's all those wonderful upcycling artists, or I buy really practical stuff there. I bought, really good eco dishwashing liquid when I was at Festival of Thrift. Did you manage to include them, and because it's a brilliant opportunity for them to turn a profit? How did that carry?
Well, we charged them 25 quid each to go online in July. And we've kept them going. We said we'd keep them going all the way through Christmas. We did special offers on the festival weekend. We're doing special offers now for those thrifty traders. And then we'll go back to them in January and say, do you want to be part of the, we hope, live event next year? But we will keep that going. We'll pop-up market and support those, maintain the online. And we'll be running pop-up workshops September.
Great, and I'm really glad you mentioned the digital poverty. I've actually not heard that phrase before, but it's really important that we recognise. I wrote, interestingly, writing about this, I wrote, everybody's been on Zoom this year. I got like 20 emails saying, not everybody anger, and I totally take the point. But it's really important, and again, it was kind of what Bradley was hinting at a little bit about, making sure that there were tickets for walk-ups for people who don't have the digital option, because it is very easy to fall into that trap. Look at me. Stella, brilliant. All of you, brilliant, inspiring examples. What I'd love to do now is just I asked you all to think a little bit about what you're taking forward. We've got love you to share with us something that, or several things that you think you will take forward into the future. You've all hinted around levels of engagement. Absolutely, but maybe there's some practical things you'd be able to share. Could I do the same order? And Bradley, could I start with you and just talk about what the future? Actually, what I'd love to know is sort of short-term, long-term. What the hell are we going to do in 2021? And then, hey, let's do blue sky for a future when we're all vaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the work that we'd be doing at the local level, the kind of redesign of the festival around the hyperlocal approach, I think will go forward in 2021. I'm trying to it's all balancing really at the moment, because many of you may have come to the events that we've previously done in around the aegis of Greenwich Fair, and the trade-off is rolling them to sustain. So I'm trying to sustain a bit of that while really putting a lot more eggs into the local approach. Once again, we've got various commissions starting and underway. There's some really exciting work which I think builds on what I was talking about earlier on in terms of connecting to bigger narratives which are happening across the UK, across feels as though it's contextualized by the stories of people and place. That's the people who live in the boroughs in which we work. But I've also been thinking about wider narratives and stories that we share with people in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. Those are really important. I'm balancing. I haven't made a call on this yet, whether we can, and we are actually moving the dates next year to the same slot in late August, early September. So it will be the 27th of August. You know, to what extent we can take a chance on going back to large-scale destination spectacular. You know, I think there's such an appetite for that work, but I'm slightly cautious about it still at the moment. So that's the jury's out on that one. But that will come back at some stage in terms of 22 or whenever it comes back, maybe next year if we're lucky. For a while, but the kind of, I've talked about storytelling, but the theatre narrative of GDIF, I think, will continue to deepen, strengthen. Storytelling needs to be at the heart of it. So those are my top line things. I hope that's, is there anything more that I missed there, Angus?
No, that's great. I just when you talk about storytelling, it's quite interesting. What's your sense of what those stories might look like? You know, it's interesting seeing stuff that reflects the times we're in, but also I have to say I found the times when I forgot about COVID for the 10 minutes watching a show were a great joy and release as well.
I mean, I suppose uppermost in my mind is storytelling about healing and connection and hope, I suppose. So those kind of I mean, those storytelling narratives, and maybe not King Lear next year.
God forbid. Hope. Okay, I'm getting choked up again. Clive, what are you going to take? Thanks, Bradley. Clive, what do you think you'll take forward? I'm interested particularly in this new digital relationship you found with Circus, which is very strong.
I think the digital relationship is something that we're definitely going to take forward. Everything I'm planning in the future has got an element of digital. We learned very fast how to become filmmakers, and also into the work that we wanted to get out there, like the diverse work. A lot of the times we've been trying to get festivals and programmers to come and see our work. One of the ways this year was to put it online. You know, and some of the stuff that we've done has been in European City of Culture, the same film with Conundrum from Crying in the Wilderness. So I think we're going to keep on doing that. It also helps your world reach, but at the same time, I think we've learned about well, and we're going to have to accept that. And so next year we're planning to do partnerships with people like Without Walls, and we're going to be working with the Royal Docks, because that's important as well. That's one way. Newham's one of those areas of low engagement, and one of the ways you can actually get people to see the arts has always been the long thing we've argued is outdoor arts. And so to trying to be able to provide work for my local community, which is a really good, high quality, I think that's the other thing we.
Thank you, Clive. Welcome. You've always been pretty good on outdoor arts, let's face it, Clive, but it sounds like you're proper there now. Lucy, what about you? Is Coddywomple going to go ahead forever?
I don't know about forever, but we are currently working on an Arts Council funding bid to do another one in February. Big coats are going to be required, but we do have plans for the future. We'd like to pair up with maybe some of the major festivals in Bristol and do outreach. We definitely saw that artists tend to all live in the same areas of Bristol, so we want to kind of move out of those areas to areas which have got social deprivation, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's loads of things we want to do, but we're taking baby steps at the moment.
Artists in ghettos, I mean, it's got to be stopped, hasn't it? Lucy, I look forward to writing a letter of support for your Arts Council
Thank you.
application in the future. Great. Rachel, where's Bournemouth? Steve, that was amazing in Bournemouth this year, wasn't it? Amazing.
Lots
So
of reasons. Yeah, no, it was amazing. We're only going to be building our community provision more. I think another thing to take forward is realising that whilst a lot of what we did felt like we were reacting to restrictions, actually inadvertently and then more purposefully, it became work that was actually more accessible. Thinking about all, I've had feedback that they were able to access online workshops. One particular person who had children on the autistic spectrum who couldn't have attended a workshop in person, but was able to via online. And also the whole fluidity that we introduced to ensure that audiences were spaced out and separate and able to go to the less busy areas actually was a really good idea anyway. And then generally would have been perhaps intimidating for people who are less used to these kind of events. So I think it gives you, whenever you have to do something differently, it's a really good chance to reflect on what things you came to do or the approaches you came to adapt to and take on, and how they actually worked and impacted different audiences, because it's always what we need, isn't it? We always need to expand our audiences. As an educator as well, I really thought a lot about how we've had horrific cuts in the arts in state education. So how else are we going to be seen if that seed isn't grown within state education? It has to be somewhere else for people to access, recognise their skills and talents and what they have to offer. And I had several wonderful conversations on, and that's just, you know, it's heartwarming. We actually had a few other educators there who could give very specific local advice as well. And I think that's essential. We have to go some to make up for that deficit now in place, which is only going to impact more and more over the years when young people don't get the arts provision they deserve within schools.
great. Thank you for bringing learning back into it. I think that's really agree. Stella, what are you taking forward from this?
Well, I think I'm going to use that terrible word, blended. It's going to be a blended approach, but as with wine, it's about taking the best of the different vintages. I think, not diluting good coffee with blended poorer varieties. I think so. Keeping the local, the hyper local, the digital, and the large scale event, but connecting them clearly to each other. And it's brilliant that the development manager to work part-time with us to help us in all of that, and really bring those local voices out, you know, as we did with Empathy Museum's Mile in My Shoes, Quarantine, Between Us We Know Everything. I see that Jackson Barnard with Acro-Jus is looking to incorporate local voices into a new version of Wheelhouse. So finding ways to tell those local stories and really and where we are in the world, whilst also in a blended way ensuring that we remain international, that we reach out, particularly post-Brexit. We can't just focus inwards, we have to reach out internationally, but letting us make a clear statement that the local can be global, and we are still all global citizens working towards a sustainable future.
This isn't a webinar, it's a manifesto.
Yep.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you. Lorna, you kind of worked across a lot of our guests' work. Are you feeling some kind of harmony going on here?
I really do. And I think as from an artist perspective, we have made a huge learning curve this year. And that reach that we can, as outdoor artists, you know, there's no replacement for the communitas that I feel when I'm in a bunch of people making work in a field. That's hard to replicate, but huger if we can embrace some of this digital technology. And what I feel this year with working with all these people that are in this room is that they've held hands with us and we've gone on that journey together. And some of those hierarchies that might be when people are using a shopping list to book work have disappeared. We've worked with them to make this new work and to forge ahead together, which feels that partnership. I never want to see that replaced. That's been really exciting. And never let go of that. Angus, before I stop talking, there's some amazing examples and links of other people's work that have